Hello, everybody. Good evening. Good evening to the 12th episode of Meet the Fresh. And as promised, this episode we will again have a guest. Last week, ako lang, medyo nag-rant-rant lang ako, and stream of consciousness, which actually amounted to nothing beneficial to the country. But anyway, so our guest for tonight is Mr. Richard Bolisay, who is a film critic and also assistant professor at the University of the Philippines. We will be talking about films. Basically, I will also be asking him to explain to us ano ba yung film criticism. Kasi 'di ba, may mga taong mahilig manood ng pelikula, but at may mga tao din na nagsusulat tungkol sa pelikula, but how does it parang paano ko malalaman if what I'm doing when I'm writing about movies or blogging about movies is already considered film criticism, etc., etc. And then if I want to take this seriously, what do I do to prepare, etc., etc. And then, of course, we will also be asking Richard about his views on the Philippine film industry as well as the future of the Philippine film industry as a result of what's happening now with the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdowns and not just the constraints in our movement or mobility, but also the effect on film of what's happening in terms of resources, in terms of the closure of ABS, etc., etc. So, without further delay, I now welcome Richard. Hi, Chard. Good evening.
Hi, Cecil. Good evening. Can you hear me well?
Yes, you are loud and
Okay.
clear. Thank
Good
you to
evening sa lahat
everyone.
ng ating Good evening to everyone tuned in
Mm-mm.
and to everyone who will watch it because I know that you're recording this also for future consumption.
Yes. So, for those who are just joining us or about to join us or joining us on a delayed basis, this video will live in on Facebook Live and on YouTube. Live on in infamy. Ayan. Anyway, so Chard, first of all, I would like to thank
Hi.
you for coming on my very high quality
Yeah.
show. Charot. So, grabe,
Yeah.
matagal ko na kasi siya invite.
Yeah.
Except,
I agree to be here because I feel like we haven't talked for a long time and this is a good excuse to have
I
a
know,
conversation that is not
oo.
only fun but also meaningful. Wow.
Yes. And at the same time, I would like to assure everybody who's watching that we will do our best to be accurate and to be sensitive para hindi kami mabash. Okay. And with that promise, okay, so before we start on the more uh, substantial part of the interview, itatanong ko muna sa'yo yung personal history mo. So, kwento mo muna sa amin
Diba?
kung paano ka napunta sa ganitong karera, 'di ba? So, how did you become a film critic and ano ba talaga yung ginagawa pag sinasabing nag-i-engage ang isang tao sa film criticism?
Okay. Ang hirap, no? So like most people, I started without a plan. No, it's not like when I was young, I wanted to be a film critic. There's no such thing. And when I entered college, film wasn't my first course. So I was actually in landscape architecture. I did more than 2 years of courses. And then I shifted to film because I'm very interested in film watching, not really film writing per se. So mahilig lang ako manood ng pelikula. Tapos I finished my degree and I really know right then and there that I don't want to be a filmmaker. It's not like I don't want to make films. It's more of I'd prefer writing to making. And I feel bad because there's not a lot of inspiration around. No, it's not like we have a lot of accessible film critics. So siguro yung emphasis on accessible. So we have film critics, but sometimes they can be quite difficult to access, to read, and also to hang out with. It's not like there's an association of Filipino film critics where you can join and you can feel, comfortable being with. So,
Mm.
wala talagang path. So, unfortunately, like many of the film critics we know, nasa academe, o kaya nasa cultural work, it's not a
Mm.
full-time job.
Okay.
And sinasabi ko siya sa mga, like, I organized a film critics group early this year na natigil lang because of COVID. But these are young people. And I tell them that, if you wanted to be a film critic, just start writing. It doesn't
Mm.
matter whether it's good, doesn't matter whether it's you have like 5 readers or 1,000 readers. You really
Mm.
have to start writing. And that's what I did in 2006. So I started my
Mm.
blog, Pilok Pelikula, in 2006, 2007. I think 2007, but I was already writing, in my diaries in 2006.
Mm.
And, it's not really specific to Philippine cinema. I was writing about things I've seen, whether online, whether it's a cinehan. So there wasn't really much, limit to what I was writing about.
Mm.
And it's a blog called Lilok Pelikula. Very ancient. Like, I don't know if people still know what blog means, but we used to have
Correct.
this journal.
Oo.
Long form, kumbaga parang
Mm.
before Facebook and Twitter, we used to write long form.
Oo.
And may blog roll, you can comment on people's blogs and posts, etc. So it's a community per se, basically. And yeah, I just started writing, and like as time went by, I realized I was gaining readership the way you
Mm.
gain followers now, or you gain like
Mm.
people who follow you.
Mm.
And before I knew it, I was writing for publications. I was being invited to festivals, but it wasn't like I planned to be a film critic. There's no
Mm.
such thing. I think what was driving me was really a passion for films. I like
Mm.
watching films and I like writing about them. And it's
Mm.
not just films that you watch at the Cineplex, no? Hindi lang sa theater, because there's a lot of alternative venues around.
Mm.
So, may Ekasay, may mga pinapalabas na films yung mga embassies, yung mga
Mm.
maliliit na communities. Dinadayo ko siya dati. Like, I really take the time to watch films, outside the comfort of my home, because
Mm.
I used to have that concept of cinema na yun nga, kasi cinema is not just the films you watch, no? Cinema is also space.
Mm.
And part of my idea of cinema is really social, no? Hindi lang siya personal consumption of the films I see. It's also like how I saw it, where I
Mm.
saw it, when I saw it. Yun yung pinag-usapan natin kanina, no?
Mm.
I think it's important, when you start out as a film critic, if you want to take it seriously, to be open to various kinds of definitions, various
Mm.
kinds of experiences. And I think
Mm.
the advantage of starting out young, like what I did, was you're still very young and very open to things, and
Mm.
you don't worry much about the big things in life, no? Like you have a day job, but you also want to pursue other things. Kumbaga
Mm.
parang it's cliche. I'm sure like young people might cringe at the idea, but since we're much older now, we're in a position to say that when you're younger, you really have this kind of vulnerability that allows you to do a lot of things. And I think that's why I'm proud of the book I came out with last year, is because although it's no longer me in a sense, like when I look back, I no longer write that way, but it was
Mm.
able to bottle that time na I was I was carefree, like I could say whatever I want, and I
Mm.
don't really care much about things. But like I'm I'm actually proud of the idea that I carved my way into where I am now, with the help
Mm.
of a lot of people, of course, like with the help of
Mm.
friends, with the help of connections. But there's no, like I wasn't attached to any publication
Mm.
full time. I was really
Oo.
writing
Yeah.
independently,
Oo.
and that has always been my impetus for what I do. Like,
Okay.
yun.
So at what point did it occur to you that what you were doing is already film criticism and not just blogging about the movies that you liked or the movies that you saw?
Uh,
Or does it
you know,
matter?
the thing is, we have a culture that we're very attached to labels, no?
Mm-mm.
Whether that sounds hugot or not,
Mm-mm.
it applies to a lot of things, no? People are very concerned about ano yung title nila sa work, kung ano ba yung relationship status, kung critic ba ako or reviewer, or epal lang. But that's a good question because like what I said in the introduction of my book, we don't really have a strong culture of film criticism. That's why when people say critics, the connotations are often negative, no?
Mm-mm.
Epal, o kaya parang
Mm-mm.
nagpapaganda lang, or nanlalait,
Mm-mm.
namumuna, etc. That's why the
Mm-mm.
term is difficult to be comfortable with. Kasi
Okay.
parang, yun, kumbaga parang, I was really, kumbaga parang early on, I hate the term critic. Like,
Mm-mm.
to be honest, like to date my experience, it was only in 2017 that
Oo.
I was, I was calling myself a critic, that I'm comfortable people calling me a critic. Like when people ask for my bio, I put
Mm-mm.
writer. I don't put film critic. Parang
Mm-mm.
there's sort of, parang nahihiya ka. Parang you're not comfortable with it. You know what changed?
Mm-mm.
I joined Berlinale. I joined this film festival in Berlin. So they had this
Mm-mm.
thing called Talent Press where they put together various film critics from all over the world. And I experienced that with them, it's no big deal. No, it's not an issue. Kumaga parang they're very comfortable calling themselves film critic. And
Mm-mm.
here I am. I already have like 10 years of experience
Mm-mm.
writing,
Mm-mm.
programming, participating in festivals. And ano siya, obviously it's very political, but it's also something colonial. It's also something cultural that, you know, it's hard for us to be proud of what we're doing. And
Oo.
and in the beginning of what I do, I can't even say career. Kumbaga parang, I was supposed to
Oo.
say in the beginning of my career, pero parang
Oo.
it held me back. Pero in the beginning of
Mm-mm.
what I was doing, parang, yun, hindi ako comfortable. The same way ayaw nating matawag na blogger, pre-Mocha
Okay.
era. Parang,
Okay.
there's a discomfort of being called a blogger, but there's also
Oo.
discomfort of being called a critic. So parang,
Oo.
it wasn't instinctive that I called myself a critic. It took a
Mm.
while, and that's okay. But,
Mm.
if I had like an opportunity to talk to my younger self, para
Mm.
loosen up, it's fine. It's just a
Mm.
label. But siguro
Oo.
turning point for me was when I started getting paid.
Mm.
I mean, to be honest, like,
Mm.
we don't usually get paid for what we
So when
write.
did you start
And,
getting paid for your
yeah,
writing ng film criticism?
yeah,
So ano ba yung term pala muna? Kasi nadyajahe din akong gamitin yung film criticism kasi hindi din naman talaga ako marunong. So I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
know how to distinguish between
yeah,
people writing about films and
yeah.
their output, parang ganyan.
Oh, parang ako naman, there shouldn't be a hierarchy about it. No, kumaga parang
Mm.
if you say for criticism, it shouldn't feel like it's too academic or it's too inaccessible or anything. Ako, film writing is fine. So, I started getting paid. Sinabi ko sa libro, like, in 2011, 4 years
Mm.
after I started blogging. And it was, I was writing for a film site called Lagarista. Tapos, wala na
Mm.
siya ngayon. And, they were really kind enough to pay me for what I wrote. And it's interesting because I didn't ask, no? They offered. And yun nga, kumbaga parang, it's very rare that you get paid for your writing.
Mm.
And now I'm more comfortable asking about it. But if you
Mm.
were young and starting out, di ba, parang the thing was like happy ka na just to be able to like write for a publication. And
Oo.
there are a lot of publications I wrote for that didn't pay me. I mean, I didn't feel bad about that. It's more of like, I mean, it's cultural capital. You invest a lot of time in your writing. And,
Mm.
the very reason that film critics aren't taken seriously is that people don't value us monetarily, diba? People don't
Mm.
value us financially, diba? And I think that's a
Mm.
problem. I mean, writers here don't really, live on writing
So,
alone, di ba? I mean,
yeah,
it's impossible.
in relation to what you said, kasi you mentioned value. So, 'di ba yung usual na sinasabi nga ng mga tao ngayon na mahilig silang tanungin is, ano ba yung ambag mo? So, for you, ano ba yung ambag ng film critic
Yeah,
o yung film criticism sa society?
yeah. Oo. Ah, I don't know, very topical yung usapin ng ambag, ano,
Mm,
ngayon parang,
mm,
I mean, that's a good question. That's a relevant question, but also, like, for me, we should also reframe it in such a way that, napaka-utilitarian ng question, no? Parang,
oo,
pag hinahanapan tayo ng ambag sa lipunan, parang,
oo,
we tend to like think of the things we do in in utilitarian means, like ano bang
mm,
silbi nito. But then again, di ba,
oo,
like hindi lang naman siya monolithic na silbi.
oo,
Like it's a long process of finding out what you do, finding out
mm,
what's the purpose of what you're doing, etc.
mm,
And to answer your question is that cinema has been here for over 100 years. No, like
oo,
over the past year, we're celebrating the centennial of Philippine cinema, and it's important to note
mm,
that in the beginning of cinema, there was also writing,
mm,
and writing reflects the culture of the people, the culture of the art being produced,
mm,
and the people who read these writings, they are given this kind of direction into an understanding of their lives, of their
mm,
identity, of their nation,
mm,
etc. And I always tell, my students, because I teach, that, it's impossible to really separate cinema from real life. Whether it's
oo,
entertainment, whether it's rom-com, whether it's BL, whether it's gay films, that kind of film cannot be produced without an anchor on the society, no,
oo,
on the society we're living in.
mm,
And film criticism and film writing allows the writer to articulate the experience, not
mm,
just of watching the film, but of
mm,
of consuming that art, being presented to him. And good criticism for me is able to impart that sensation, that
mm,
experience, whether intellectual, emotional, mental, that kind of understanding or experience with the audience. Whether the
mm,
audience agrees or not with the critic, I don't think it matters a lot. It's about
oo,
opening up discussions. It's about allowing that audience to think. So ako parang, obviously I've always had, arguments with people. I can count people I've had fights with because of my opinion. And that's perfectly fine. The
mm,
problem is that this notion that we should agree,
yeah,
we shouldn't agree. And because agreement, on all levels creates a homogeneous, monolithic society, which we don't
yeah,
like. I mean,
yes,
disagreement is actually healthy. And I think it's a
mm,
misconception that, like we should only read critics we agree with, we align with.
mm,
On the contrary, di ba, it's for me good criticism allows you to see something you haven't seen, when
mm,
you saw the film. And I think it's a value of criticism that people tend to
mm,
overlook
oo,
because critics are boxed into this idea na they're rigid,
yes,
they're just mapanlait, etc.
oo,
Well, in fact, there's a lot you can do in criticism.
mm. Tsaka 'di ba usual, I mean, it's not just in film criticism, pero even criticism in relation to other fields na yung sinasabi na, kasi he's writing or he's doing criticism because he can't do the actual work. 'Di ba
Yeah.
may mga ganung comments din yung mga tao.
Yeah,
But
parang
anyway,
you're tama
go
tama.
ahead.
Parang you're a failed artist, no? You're
Hmm.
doing criticism because you can't make films, which is, it's a
Oo.
ilang beses na rin yun nasabi sa akin, and I
Mm,
just laugh because
mm,
it just shows how weak their foundations are in terms of
mm,
appreciating art, diba? I mean,
mm,
just because it doesn't mean that I'm not allowed to speak my mind and to actually, write about things in an intellectual manner.
mm. I perfectly agree. Actually, the reason na I asked you about yung ambag kanina and value, kasi 'di ba in a capitalist context, in a capitalist society, laging parang walang intrinsic value yung mga bagay, even human beings. It looks like wala silang intrinsic value. And it's always yung value connected to something, whether utilitarian or whether, now which could be anything, or economic, yung pag may ganun ka lang at saka nagkakaroon ng value yung what you do, what you produce, or even you as a human being.
Yeah, that's a very
So,
good point, no?
mm,
Yung sinabi ko sa isa kong lecture, no, criticism is in fact resistance, no? Like you're
mm,
resisting this very dominant culture of commercialism. Because it's very
yeah,
hard to commercialize critics, no? Kumbaga parang,
mm,
people don't really pay for critics. So parang when you write something, it's actually a form of resistance to this very pervasive culture of where everything is, being commercialized, being monetized, etc. You're actually doing something to steer the direction of discussion towards
mm,
something more meaningful, no? Kumbaga parang hindi lang siya about economic influence, hindi lang siya about, yung kumbaga parang, di ba? I mean, I get sick all the time when, I mean, business, I mean, film is business. I mean, we need to earn, we need to live. But also,
mm,
hindi naman siya either or eh. Parang I feel
mm,
like, like parang lang yung mainstream and independent. Hindi sila
yeah,
magkalaban.
mm,
Stop putting
mm,
things, in opposition. Kumbaga parang,
mm,
there are critics who work for the money. And that's good for them. But there are
yeah,
also critics who work for culture, for
mm,
intellect, etc. And ako, like I'm not rich, obviously, and it's not something that I expect to live off from. But I feel like it's the bigger purpose, and it's
mm,
something that since I've been doing it for more than 10 years, I realized that's the only thing I'm good at, and I'm happy to be part of it.
mm, mm. So earlier you mentioned about Berlinale and how your views of at least the label of being a film critic changed because of that. And I know na you also went abroad for graduate studies. And is there anything in terms of how you view your work and how you view yung the way film criticism is done in the Philippines that changed after your graduate studies?
Yeah, I mean, hindi naman secret. Sasabihin ko sana secret sana yung graduate studies
Mm.
ko. Pero,
Hindi pa
alam
secret,
mo,
alam naman ng lahat.
interesting yung sinabi mo, very topical
Mm,
again because as
mm,
someone who's always on Twitter, I
mm,
see a lot of discussions on academic twit on academia, on how difficult it is to take up an MA in the Philippines, how it's different abroad, etc., etc. And I feel like it took me 10 years, no? It took me more than 10 years to do my MA or my undergrad. And sometimes people feel bad about that.
mm,
And I'm here to
mm,
say na no, actually take your time. Kasi nung nag-masters ako abroad, it actually provided me confidence to speak about my experience, to speak about the things I know. As opposed
mm,
to like, dumiretso ka from under. Again, it's not wrong if you do it. I'm just saying that
mm,
people who take so much time to do their masters or to pursue their passion or to become more serious with their work, it's okay. The process is long and that's fine. You shouldn't feel insecure that it has taken you so long to do it. In
mm,
fact, uh, yun nga, nung nagkaroon ako ng perspective nung ibang tao. I mean, like, I got to know foreign film critics. I participated in foreign film festivals. Nakanood ako sa mga sinihan sa ibang bansa. I mean, it sounds vain, but
mm,
this very specific experience actually elevates my understanding of cinema more in the sense that it allowed me to gain an appreciation of what I do. That in
mm,
fact, those gigs that I didn't get paid for, those
mm,
films that I saw late at night after screening, they actually meant a lot to where I am now in terms of how
mm,
I frame my writing, in terms of how I see cinema, in terms of like how I value the stuff I see. And nung nagmasters ako, yung mga kaklase ko, like I feel like I was more confident because I had experience, and
Mm-mm.
because I was also able to live through a time where, pre Netflix, pre
Mm-mm.
pandemic, kumbaga parang the experience of cinema is very physical.
Mm-mm.
And I think one important thing is that I wouldn't be able to publish my book without that. Kasi
Mm-mm.
parang here I was too insecure. Like before I did my masters, I mean, it doesn't show maybe, but I'm too insecure. It's not worth
Okay.
the trees being cut down for. It's not worth, I mean, people won't pay for it. But then when I
Mm-mm.
came back here after my studies, I realized there's no other time to do this. And,
Mm-mm.
I feel like, I wrote shitty things. I did always write good stuff. But, those 12 years of writing, meron naman ako sigurong naisulat dito na meaningful. And kahit
Mm-mm.
pa paano. And, like, it gave me that confidence to actually just do it and, to pursue teaching, to pursue further writing, to not be pressured by, by many things. And, yun, siguro, yun, nakatulong talaga sa akin yung pag-alis.
Mm-mm.
Distance really helps. But another insight from me is that when I was there, it's hard for me to comment on the industry. I cannot
Mm-mm.
read the room because I'm not here, right? Kumaga parang I really felt the disconnect of talking about my national cinema, and I'm also conscious that I'm not
Mm-mm.
there.
Why is
And
that? Why should where you are matter to be able to say something?
because it informs your opinion. It informs what
Mm-mm.
you're saying. Like,
Mm-mm.
yung term na ginagamit ko, yung read the room, kasi you have to be able to read the room, no? Kumaga parang, you can't just say something in a vacuum or without context.
Mm-mm.
And as someone here, like for say, umattend ako ng festival, or I'm interviewing people, or, kumaga parang, yeah, I know the situation on ground. It doesn't mean that you cannot say things. Yun yung problem
Mm-mm.
yun yung conundrum ng criticism, no? People think that when you criticize something, you're stopping other people from speaking up, or like you're
Okay.
invalidating what they're pointing
Mm-mm.
out. No, it's
Mm-mm.
actually, like question challenging you. It's actually like,
Mm-mm.
like challenging you to answer my criticism. It's not,
Mm-mm.
like impinging on your freedom to speak. Diba? It's the
Oo.
contrary. And
Mm-mm.
yun lang, kumbaga parang I'm just, I'm a very sensitive writer, and it's something that I think about all the time,
Mm-mm.
where I am in what I'm writing.
Mm-mm.
And it's important to me to know the room, where I am in the room, and can I speak about this, or do I just talk about this with my
Mm-mm.
friends rather than
Mm.
write something for a public, audience.
Oo. Oo. Well, in that light, or in connection to that, sinasabi ko lang na nagbe-benefit din ako as your friend in being able to talk about movies with you. Anyway, so speaking of sensitivities, yung next question ko naman is yung experience ng pagsusulat ng and being critical of the output of other people. So, eto ha, correct me if I'm wrong. Hindi ko kasi alam kung pareho sa film versus sa music criticism. Pero yung napapansin ko kasi is, at least sa local Filipino music scene, hindi karamihan, marami sa mga nagsusulat about music or doing music criticism are also practitioners, aka musicians. Ayan. And since maliit lang din naman yung scene sa Pilipinas, nagkakakitaan din yung mga taong 'to, 'di ba? Dun sa mga gigs or kung ano pang pa-event diyan. So, ang napapansin ko, well, hindi ko siya napapansin. I'm just really thinking whether the fact that you will have that you have a lot of interaction with this person might make you pull back from being honest, whatever that word, dun sa
Yeah.
opinion mo, dun sa output niya. Now, I'd like to ask if that is also the same way when it comes to film. That's one. And
Mm.
second naman is, personally naman sa iyo, has it ever been a consideration yung paano yung ano yung mararamdaman nung person about whose work you are writing about?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think what's great about when you're starting out is that you didn't really care.
Mm,
And I can speak from experience that, when I
mm,
started writing about films, I didn't really care about what the filmmakers would feel, if I wrote
mm,
about their films. And that's why I tell people that you shouldn't be ashamed of your early writings, because that was the time when you're really honest with your feelings, with how you felt when you saw the film. And when I started out, I didn't really have a lot of filmmaker friends. Kumbaga parang kilala ko lang na filmmakers yung mga nakasabay ko sa university. And
mm,
I really missed that time, to be honest. Like I can never write that way again. That's
mm,
why the book is very special to me, because parts of it recorded that those moments when I was really rash, I was really unkind. I was really just writing from the spirit of I hated your film and this is how I felt while seeing it. And
mm,
there's something very legitimate about that. There's
mm,
something youthful. Kasi yung problem ko siguro sa mga writings na mababasa ko na, no, where's the youth? No, where's that spirit? Where's that energy? And that's something that I followed in my early years. In my early years of writing. It's more of my me. Like parang ikaw, di ba? Your personal feelings towards what you're watching, and that's fine. That's
mm,
valid
mm,
and all. But
mm,
as a writer, we also have to improve
mm,
and to develop, to evolve,
mm,
etc. And yeah, over time, I gained friends from the industry, and that connection, that relationship, really affects your writing. I wouldn't be hypocritical to say na uh, mawawala yung biases ko. I can never be objective.
mm,
Uh, Kaya siguro like it took me a while to really warm up with the people in the industry, because
mm,
I know that being close to them, would affect my view of the film. Like pwede ko i-tone down yung words. Pwede
mm,
kong shift yung perspective ng discussion, 'di ba? Kumbaga parang there's a lot of ways you can do in your writing to actually
mm,
foreground things, no?
yeah.
And tama ka din doon, no? Kumbaga parang I think yung insight mo kanina comes from being married to a musician. And that's right, no? I mean, I used to write music criticism too, and I'm not a musician, obviously.
Mm,
And uh, from my end, like I studied film, and I have to admit that that's important. No, I
mm,
mean, you have to equip yourself with knowledge. You have to read up on the language of film. It doesn't
mm,
have to be theories, no. It doesn't have to be all those opaque writings that are very difficult to understand. No, you just
mm,
have to know, cinematography, editing, sound, language,
mm,
uh, and that will really help your understanding of what makes a good film or not, what makes it effective, or
mm,
kumbaga parang ano siya parang tama naman na hindi mo kailangan maging filmmaker para mag-criticize.
mm,
You have to do your assignment. No? You have to do
mm,
it's a job. And somehow, uh, when you do journalism, no, when you interview people, at least you know the
uh,
basic stuff of journalism. You can't just, kaya sasabi nila, I agree anyone can be a critic, but not everyone can be a good critic. And
mm,
like in our age now, everyone's, people are on Twitter, on Instagram,
mm,
they
mm,
have the platform. It's free. You don't
mm,
have to be published on a magazine or newspaper.
mm,
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for that. But it takes seriousness. It takes passion for it to be able to create a piece of writing that will affect people and for them to take you seriously.
mm.
Ayun lang.
Hindi, naalala ko lang kasi merong, I don't know kung sa Atlantic yun before na magazine na, yung sinasabi nga nila na, ano yun, the death of expertise. So parang ganun din kasi yung nangyayari now, in the sense that, um, the access to broadcasting platforms have become democratized. And then, mm, and because of this, yung consumption din ng mga tao, so yung mga ibang tao dati na hindi naman nagko-consume ng film criticism or ng film reviews, syempre ngayon nagkaka-access na sila, 'di ba? Kasi dati kailangan mong bumili ng publication to be
Jaryo.
able to read. Oo, ngayon pwedeng mag-tweet lang ako or yung mga YouTube videos na may mga whatever whatever. Pero yung mga bago kasing dumadating, parang dahil siguro sa hindi, paano ba to? Sorry, I'm going about this very inelegantly. Kasi 'di ba, yung mga publications kahit papaano may gatekeeper sila. So, kino-curate nila kung sino yung view ng quote unquote expert. So kahit papaano, yun nga may sala nung kung sino yung pwedeng marinig. Pero ngayon, yung mga tao na wala naman access doon dati, hindi naman din at bago silang dating dito at nagbabasa ng reviews, ganyan. Hindi nila alam kung sino yung expert. 'Di ba? Which
Yeah.
is a two-way thing. Kasi yung mga bago na willing to do the work and become experts, it's good for them because they have a chance at getting an audience.
Yeah.
But then, conversely, yung mga gusto lang din naman talagang kumuda and not willing to do the work, magkakaroon din sila ng audience. So, parang,
Yeah.
so yun, yung non-expert at yung expert, pareho yung platform nila. So, parang ang hirap na din for people uh, to see kung sino ba talaga yung okay. And then for those naman na okay, it's quite difficult din sometimes to be able to distinguish themselves. So, in that sense, I guess you were lucky that you started blogging when you did. Tama ba ako?
Yeah.
Pero
Yeah.
'di
Yeah.
ba, yung space kasi dati, iba dun sa space ngayon.
Gusto ko na
Am I
parang at
making
some
sense?
point, gusto ko yung
Oh,
parang
go.
at some point na-realize mo how complicated it is. Diba,
I
parang gusto ko yung
know.
parang, diba, paano ba ako lalabas dito sa
I
argument ko na
know. In real time, 'di ba? Mm.
but you managed it, congratulations.
Oh, thank
And
you very much for that. Minsan talaga
and
mahaba pero dun din talaga ang parating. Ay, dun din makakarating. Sure.
it's really the process. Kumbaga
Mm.
parang, that's what I appreciate about it, na parang people tend to be results oriented. You know, like when they see a film, they judge the result. You know, they judge what it came out, you know, when you saw it. But then again, ako na-appreciate ko yung process. Process meaning you try to look into how the film was made, ano ba yung, kumbaga parang it's hindi lang sufficient yung text na napanood mo. It's also like how it came about, ano yung context, ano yung motivation, etc. And nung nagsa-start out ako sa writing, sa film viewing, mas results-oriented ako. Like, I would judge a film based on what I saw. Which is, you know, it's not bad. I mean, it's not wrong. But, you know, you develop along the way. And I think, nandun na ako ngayon sa process part. Kumbaga parang, kasi sabi nga nila, film is process. You know, it's not really how it came about, but it's not really the result of it, but it's more of like how you got there. And tama ka, no, lucky ako. I always tell people that, you know, nandun ako sa cusp nung digital revolution na tinatawag na may memory ako of watching films at the cinema na punong-puno. MMFF, di ba? Nakaupo ka sa aisle, so yung popcorn nakakalat sa upuan mo, SRO siya, tapos pwede kang umulit ng pelikula. Di ba kumbaga parang ngayon, di ba parang pinapalabas ka na agad after the film you saw. There was a time, I mean, young people probably tuned in
Yeah.
now that you can actually just stay inside. And I remember
Yes.
like more than 5 films I saw like at the theater not twice because I just didn't go out of the theater and that's possible. And on the other hand, gamay din ako sa technology. Like, nagtutorrent ako, nag-Twitter ako, nag-Facebook ako. Kumbaga parang hindi ako like, you know, hindi ako dinosaur na hindi ako marunong gumamit ng social media. But I also have like romanticize memories of analog na
Mm-mm.
journal o kaya
Oo.
like pumupunta ka ng sinihan, tumatakbo ka, nagmamadali ka kasi nag-start ka on time
Oo,
or
oo.
nag-iipon ka ng movie tickets or alam mo
Mm.
yun, kumbaga parang these are
Yes.
experiences that we no longer have now.
At
But
maraming
I'm happy.
friendships maraming friendships ang nasira dahil sa mga late na dumadating sa sinihan.
I
Papasok
know!
na,
Ayun,
ay naku, may mga ano-ano yan dati nang wala pa siya, papasok na ako, iiwan ko tong ticket mo dito sa may ate dito sa labas. Di ba
oo.
yung mga ganyan eksena
Yeah,
dati?
ako yan. I mean, ayoko na nililate. Pero like,
Mm.
iiwan ko na lang yung ticket mo sa labas. Like,
Mm.
pumasok ka na lang. Nasa row, like row F, ganyan.
Oo nga. Tsaka alam mo, ito pa ang nakakaawa lang dun sa hindi makaka-experience nun is yung since yung cinema is a very public place, parang dati, ang hirap magkaroon ng guilty pleasure. Oh my God. So, manonood kami ng si Angelo and Bobby Andrews na movie.
I love
Yan
it.
yung,
You're
mm,
dating yourself.
I
That's in
know,
the
right?
90s.
In the 90s. Okay, so syempre, di ba, pag nasa UP ka, tapos parang medyo gusto mong mag-cut ng class, pupunta ka sa SM North para manood. But then, marami taga-UP na nanonood sa SM North. And then the dilemma na gusto mo talagang panoorin tong movie ni Angelo and Bobby Andrews. But my God, the public spectacle ng pagpila doon sa may bilihan ng
Oo,
ticket. Kasi
gaganon ka.
hindi kasi dati, 'di ba, ang bilihan ng ticket talaga dati kung saan yung cinema na na kung saan ka manonood, dun ka sa labas nun pipila. So, walang deniability na kung anong papanoorin mo, kitang-kita na for all to see. So,
May
yung mga
pangalan na.
eksenang
Oo.
yung mga eksenang guilty pleasure dati, walang mga ganyan. Talagang magkakaroon ng test talaga ng gaano mo kagusto yung artista dahil may public humiliation involved. Yun, medyo wala na masyadong ganun. Yun na nga, kasi even ngayon, di ba, isa na lang yung bilihan eh. So, parang, yun, pwede mo talagang under the radar ka na movie fan ka pala
Yeah.
ng,
Oo,
yun.
tsaka syempre ngayon yung mga ganong pinipilahan na madami Marvel movies na and of course people
Oo.
are proud to see these movies. Kumbaga parang yun din naman yung concern ko with Marvel, no. I it's a big discussion before and it's my beef is not about not having your thing. Kumbaga parang I'm all for like make your movies. I mean, the fans will be happy about them. But it's more of like how these small movies or small industries are getting killed because of rampant capitalism. 'Di ba? Like 10 screens, 8 Spider-Man.
Oo,
I mean,
oo.
kung sasabihin mo law of supply and demand siya, I mean, it's bullshit. It's obviously like money. Like it's about the money. And I feel bad kasi parang wala tayong quota sa Hollywood films na pinapalabas dito. And what I'm fighting for is just a fair game, like there are a lot of Filipino movies who will be pulled out first day,
Yeah.
second day pa lang,
Yes.
not have a
Yes.
fighting chance, etc.
Yes.
And I mean, hindi na siya discussion ngayon kasi pandemic na. But, it used to be something that I feel strongly about. That I'm not stopping you to watch your Marvel. I'm just saying, I wish we had more opportunities for smaller films, for films that aren't for everyone. And to be honest, these Disney movies are marketing eh. I mean, it's really, I mean, they're well made because they have a lot of money. How dare they not to be good if you spent like millions of money, di ba? And ang laki nung ginagastos nila for marketing. It's not like you really decided to see the film. The market decided for you. I know, I'm not
Actually,
saying
yun
you're
din yung
stupid. I'm just, go.
but hindi, ang ano ko din kasi dyan is parang chicken and egg situation siya. Kasi they are saying that ganito karami yung sinihan na ipapalabas yung Spider-Man kasi ang daming tao yung may gustong manood yan. But then, if you devote yung ganong karaming sinihan, these people will not grow up watching Filipino films. And pag hindi mo kasi din siya nakasanayan, then yung alam mo lang is Marvel. So, pag manonood ka na ngayon sa sinihan, yung sa idea mo ng worth paying for is Marvel. 'Di ba? So parang
Yeah.
nape-perpetuate yun nga, yung
Yeah.
cycle na walang nanonood ng Filipino film.
And it's not the audience's fault. I mean, don't get
Hmm.
me wrong. I never blame the audience. Like, it's not the audience fault that they watch Vice Ganda, that they watch
Hmm.
Pixoto movies. It's really the market's fault. It's really this cartels. It's this people making decisions on what films we see, on what films we don't see. Who are to blame? Kumbaga, parang, I am really pissed when they blame the audience, no? There's a
Mm.
reason people like the films of Vice Ganda, of Vic Soto, of Coco Martin. I mean,
Oo.
I give them that. The problem is, like, there's no level playing field. And, if for example, if you only have 300 pesos, if you can only see one film a month at the cinemas,
Mm.
'di ba? Ang pipiliin mo na yung may entertain ka. Hindi ka na manonood nung madidepress ka, 'di ba? Like, sinama kita manood ng Pamilya Ordinaryo, 'di ba? Pinilit pa talaga kita. 'Di ba? Kung parang I have to persuade you to see it. It's not like you
Oh.
know what you're getting. Diba? Kumbaga parang I
Mm.
have to sales talk. Si Marvel, hindi niya
Mm.
kailangan mag-sales talk. Diba? Kumbaga parang,
Totoo naman.
and well, nagustuhan mo naman yung Pamilya Ordinaryo,
Uy,
diba?
oo
So
naman ano.
parang,
Ano siya. Guys, nasa Netflix pala siya. Can I just say? Pwede niyong panoorin.
yeah. Oo.
Ayun.
But we
No,
saw it at
speaking
the
of,
cinema.
I know we
Parang,
saw it
yun
sa
nga.
cinema. At actually, yung pinanood natin, parang pangalawang beses mo na.
Yeah,
Diba?
market
Pero pangalawang beses
market.
mo siyang pinanood. I know sa market, where I was pleasantly surprised because apparently, ang ganda naman pala ng sinihan doon. Diba?
Meron ka bang sponsor na Ayala Cinemas? Kaya mo ba
Oo.
sinasabi yan?
Ano yun? May?
Meron ka bang sponsor na Ayala Cinemas sa
Wala, but
sa
how I
broadcast?
wish. How I wish, mga guys. Ayala Cinemas, I'm open. Anyway, so, kasi you mentioned, yung Pamilya Ordinaryo. I think Film Fest siya nung pinanood natin siya, if I'm not mistaken. So, from the early 2000s, I think nung nag-umpisang dumami ng dumami yung mga independent film fests. And because of that, syempre dahil sa nagkaroon ng venue kung saan pwedeng ipalabas yung mga pelikula nila, dahil siya nagkaroon din ng way for them to actually make the movies, 'di ba? Kasi binibigyan yung mga ibang film fest binibigyan ng grants yung mga filmmakers to be able to make the movies. So, yun, dumami din yung mga creators, pero may pero ako. Yun nga,
Wow.
ang sabi ko nga sa yung nung in-email kita ay, this opinion may be one prompted by ignorance. May disclaimer. Anyway, pero kasi parang ngayon dun sa dami ng film fest, I'm not sure if I'm correct here. Parang nabawasan yung prestige ng yung pelikula, na napili yung pelikula mo for na i-show sa film fest. Ayan. So, sa tingin mo ba, biglang may ganun. Sa tingin mo ba may purpose yung film fests? And ngayon na ganito na karami yung film fest dito sa, at least in Metro Manila, na-reach naman natin yung point na parang saturated na at yun. Parang na-devalue na yung kung ano man yung benefit na nakukuha sa kanila at sa sobrang dami nila. Or is there no such?
Yeah. So I'm speaking from experience. No? So I'm lucky to actually be there during the first Cinemalaya in 2005, first Cinema One Originals in 2005, even Cinema Manila in the early 2000s. So I was a young cinephile, watching this, bold movies, independent films, etc. And every year I attend them, and uh, you know what you have to understand is that the festival audience is a niche crowd, no? Hindi sila sobrang laki. And like hindi talaga sila accessible eh. Like sabi mo nga Metro Manila, like kung ang Cinemalaya nasa CCP, accessible lang siya to people in Metro Manila, 'di ba? Kumbaga parang what if you live in Cebu? You will have to book a plane to see it, file a leave at your work for 1 week. 'Di ba parang ang dami niyang economic capital, ang dami niyang cost. Therefore, like I don't think nadidevalue siya. Ako parang there was a time nag-overlap pa nga yung festivals eh. Parang
Oo.
every month mayroong film festivals and hindi maganda humahog yung tao manood ng films. And ako, I welcome that. Kumaga parang ako, kasi I'm a cinephile first and a critic second. No, kumaga parang I just love watching films. I just like being at the cinema, being surprised with the films I'm watching. Kumaga parang it's a discovery for me. Kumaga, I really welcome these festivals. But for someone, who has been there in the beginning of this, some of these festivals, I feel like kailangan ding may bago silang ginagawa. Kailangan din na parang ang danger kasi is they end up becoming what they don't want to be in the beginning. So what I'm saying is that umusbong yung festivals to stand against studios, commercial studios, Star Cinema, Viva Regal. So here we are, Cinemalaya, Cinema One, would like to offer you a different content, different kinds of films. Films you don't see in Star Cinema movies. So you tend to see films about poverty, about prostitution, about, everyday realities na hindi ini-explore ng studios kasi walang audience. Na, yeah, I mean, I love that. Kumaga parang saan ba ako makakapanood ng 9-hour film, ng 8-hour film, di ba? Kundi sa mga festivals. And for me, that's good. But the problem is, parang over time, magkakamukha na rin yung mga pelikulang napoproduce. Kumaga parang they tend to come out from a similar mold. Mold pala. Na, kumaga parang ilang years na ba ang Cinemalaya? 15, 16. Diba? Parang, makikita mo na yung kumaga parang magkakamukha na sila. So parang, meron ng biases yung committee members or yung producers with the kinds of films they like. And I think that's something to address, how can we evolve, how can we innovate, how can we improve, etc. And I know Cinemalaya is ongoing now online, so I think they've prepared for an online edition of the festival, and I think that's that's good. It's a good development. It's something that's a very a welcome development from their end. And siguro I just miss the physical experience of cinema. Kumaga parang kung pupunta ka ng CCP being the main venue of Cinemalaya in like the late 2000s. Wow, as in jam-packed talaga. You'll see a lot of students, and I know ni-require lang sa kanila ng teacher nila, malamang, pero imagine like kung 10 doon or 5 doon genuinely love cinema and would do it again next year. Diba? Kumaga parang it's a heartwarming feeling na art can inspire them, it can make them, pursue art, in the future. And sobrang lively ng festival kasi. And on one hand, yung sinasabi ko kanina, niche audience, very very elitist, I mean, it costs a lot of money, it costs a lot of capital, and it's not easy. But on the other hand, it allows for the production of movies, whether sloppy man yan or maganda. I mean, it's still production, nandun pa rin siya sa, kumaga parang any kind of art can be a source of discussion. So wala ako dun sa framework ng aesthetics pa. Like I'm not saying it's good or bad pa. It's more of like this film actually reflects the Filipino experience, diba? And I think that's a good thing. Although nagdwindle na ang festival, kumaga parang only the big ones have survived. And because of, economics of it, walang
Pero
support.
dahil sa sobrang dami din ako honestly from my perspective, parang kasi namin nag-overlap. Parang since hindi mo ma-distinguish yung one festival from another, parang why should I catch this and not just wait for the next one? Why should I make an effort na eto panoorin ko? Tapos, alam mo yun, kasi ang dami-dami mo naman pwedeng panoorin. Parang ganun yung
yeah. Tsaka hindi rin kumikita. Like, I feel for the producers kasi parang sometimes they just make film for the sake of it, for the art, for the passion, but it's important for them to earn so that they can make another film. Diba? Kumaga parang Diba? Business is important eh. Kung parang ako, as much as possible, I watch films at the cinema. I just don't publicize it because it is very elitist, no? I have the privilege of being able to pay for my ticket, and
Mm-mm.
I still pay for my ticket when I see a
Mm-mm.
movie. And like it's a way of helping them. Unfortunately, when you see films in SM, it's not much. Part of the what goes to the filmmaker isn't a lot. But I'd like to think that I'm helping them, and I want them to make more films. Pero the way the landscape is changing now with streaming, it's a different ball game already.
Yeah. But then ironically enough, maybe the move to streaming can also be beneficial to the industry. Lalo na din yung mga film fests ha. Kasi, yes, it's a niche audience in the sense that may certain type of people lang naman talaga na nagiging appealing yung mga independent films or yung mga films na the usual, the typical or the ang bitch! Anyway, yung type
Binibili
ng film
pinipili Binibilang ko yung
na
ginaganon ko.
ginaganyan ko eh. Oo nga eh. So, yung type ng films na pinapalabas sa film fest, di ba? Pero, constrained din sila geographically. So, kung hindi sila constrained geographically, kahit pa sabihin mong niche yan, mas marami pa din yung audience na it's out there na pwede mong makuha. So, kung online siya, baka pwede din silang makakuha ng business model na you still get to pay per film, but then your market is so much bigger. And then yung namang issue of access, medyo hindi mababawasan pero maiiba. Kasi hindi ka na rin problema ng paano ka pupunta sa sinehan, paano ka sasakay, whatever, whatever. Kasi ngayon, pwedeng on demand, pero magbabayad ka pa din, 'di ba?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, if only we have like the most decent internet connection, in this country. I mean, I would say that, it's a great thing, I'm very open to it, and I wish the systems in place are more generous to the creators. And yung model ng streaming, ina-adapt na din ng madaming ng madaming players. There was a film a few weeks ago that was trending through Night and Day. I don't know if you've caught wind of that.
yes.
It showed in the cinemas. It didn't really earn much. It didn't really earn. I don't know, like I haven't seen it at the cinema, but it was picked up by Netflix, and it was trending for a couple of days, and people were talking about it. And if you click tweets, I mean, people really have very serious discussions about the film, which it wouldn't have kung pinalabas
Oo.
lang siya sa sinihan. So parang ako, like, that's a good thing. Kumbaga parang, I mean, culturally speaking, intellectually speaking, it's great that these films are having a second life, like in these platforms, and it's reaching to its audience. Kumbaga parang mayroon talaga siyang naabot na tao. And kumbaga parang, I mean, the filmmakers, the actors, the people who worked on the film, yung mga extras, yung mga crew, they're compensated well. I mean, sana. I mean, kasi madaming nanonood. Pero siguro ang conscious lang ako. I mean, I'm very open to streaming. Like, I want Netflix, these players. But siguro by nature kasi skeptic ako. So, what I'm skeptical about is Netflix is it's a multinational company. It's a foreign company. It's also, it operates in a way that it's asserting its power, soft power, colonial power. It's gatekeeping. It's selecting what films deserve to be here. And ano din yun like the critics are important because the critics can discern if that's true or not. Can discern if this idea of putting this film in this wide platform is earned, or like is something. What can you talk about it? Kumaga parang, of course Netflix won't say that it doesn't deserve to be here, diba? Because it's business. Critics more of a cultural role in the sense that you're talking about more more radical things, things that people should be thinking about. And ano ba nagka-qualify para ma-pick up ng Netflix? I mean, these are the questions that I'm more interested in. Kumbaga parang ano ba yung arrangement? Ano ba yung napupunta sa filmmaker? And I think those are the more important questions that critics can ask, di ba, as critics.
Tsaka of course may danger na mare-replicate din yung nangyari sa cinema where yung mga type lang ipalabas nung owners at yung diba? And then yung certain type of movies lang yung ano nila. So yung ibang viewpoint baka hindi pa din mapalabas. Although conversely, pwede din kasi nating tignan ng ang kinaiba kasi nun is that sa cinema limited lang yung run ko and limited lang yung seats ko. So parang yung pressure talaga to make money within that limited period, feeling ko lang, mas malaki kaysa kasi yung sa Netflix where it's part of your library and yung incremental cost ng keeping it in the library even if not a lot of people are watching it, hindi siya ganun kalaki. Diba?
Yeah.
Or yung
Alam mo, galing,
cost ng, yun nga, dahil syempre, pag sa sinihan may pinapalabas ka, ibig sabihin may hindi ka na ipapalabas. Na hindi ganun yung pag sa streaming. Kasi, lalo na ngayon, mura na yung storage. The fact na I keep this film doesn't really necessarily mean na I need to delete the other films, diba? Parang may ganun.
Alam mo, magaling ka dyan. Magaling ka dyan. Yung point mo na parang nire-replicate niya yung systems in place. No? Like, it's still the big players that get to say what stays, what gets shown, what gets a limited run, what gets excluded. It is true, no? It's really money driven, and it's sad because, not everyone gets to have that space to be shown to a wider audience. I think it's also important to point out that not everyone has Netflix, no? It's, I don't have Netflix. So I just borrow my friend's Netflix. Kumbaga parang not everyone has the ability to actually subscribe to all these things. And like festivals, ang dami na yung platforms, no? May I1, I don't know kung may iFlix pa, may Netflix, may Movie, may Criterion Channel. No, there's a lot of options. And if you add those subscription fees up, I mean, it's like your salary, your like monthly salary already. And do you really need all these things in your, I don't know, like there's an economic, element to it that I'm not fully sold on, but I'm happy they're around. Siguro meron lang ako isang, on the flip side, like on a positive note, na gusto i-share about streaming. There was a documentary film a month ago that was shown to a wider public. It's called Aswang by Alex Arumpak. So it's a documentary on the first 2 years of the war on drugs by your dear president. And it was supposed to premiere at the Angdocu Film Festival last March, which was canceled because of the pandemic. And, like, there would probably be only 500 or 600 people who will see it during the premiere. It's in UP, so not everyone, QC is too far. People from the south, it's too far from us. I won't be able to see it. So parang, and it was shown for one day, widely, like the whole Philippines. And I think it was able to gain like hundreds of thousands of views. And I think that was a good thing. Imagine like a film about the drug war, which you'd like to see a lot, which you'd like a lot of people to see. And this is like the platform for that, like it was able to reach a lot of people. And if you saw the discussion online, they were lively, they were really talking about the good things about, this film. And had it been shown, in UP Film Center, in Cine Adarna, yung discussion malilimit lang dun sa mga nakapanood dun. Kumbaga parang, it's a small thing. But now, because it's online and although it's limited, the hundreds of thousands of people who are able to see the film can actually talk about it in another, online space, diba? Like, safely, like I'd like to think, diba? Like, like if your film is talking about social issues, all the more that, you prefer it being seen by a wider audience. Do you agree? Do you agree? Do you
Yeah,
agree?
I totally agree. And on that note, ay, wait lang. Wait, may isang comment tayo. Okay, eto. Wait, merong comment. I will show.
Ay,
Please
wow.
address.
I know this guy. Hi,
Please
Kian. You're
address.
mentioning it. Go read
Ayan.
it.
Having more films accessible online would be a very welcome development for us who are from the regions, since a lot of Filipino films that aren't backed up by studios usually do not make it to our cinemas or would end up having a limited run at best.
Ha.
Tama
Good.
naman.
Yeah, hi Kian. Thank you for your feedback and I agree with you. For the longest time, Cecil, I'm sure you know this, but you probably don't, like think about this too much as I do. For the longest time, Philippine cinema has been Tagalog cinema. And
Okay.
that's a big problem.
Mm-mm.
Like Philippines is not just Metro Manila, it's not just people who speak Tagalog. And many of, even Nora Honor, di ba? Galing province, nagpunta ng Manila.
Mm-mm.
Love Diaz is from Mindanao, who came to Manila. Brillante Mendoza from the province came to Manila. Kumaga parang Manila has always been the center, not just, economically or
Mm-mm.
business-wise, but also culturally
Mm-mm.
speaking. And I'm happy that this problem, is being addressed now with digital technology, no? Mga
Mm-mm.
filmmakers natin na nasa Cebu, nasa Davao, nasa Iloilo, nasa
Mm-mm.
Pampanga, they can
Mm-mm.
make films now with their, with this very portable equipment. Tell their stories in their language na hindi
Mm-mm.
kailangan ng artista. Diba? I mean, what better way to celebrate, cinema,
Mm-mm.
than that, na parang it's no longer about, studio systems. It's no longer about who has the money. And that's a great development, of recent years na nakakanood na tayo ng films in Bisaya, in in you know, in different languages, in Kapampangan, 'di ba? And si Kian, he's from Cebu, and
Mm-mm.
I know him because, we talk a lot about films and happy siya na, nakakanood siya ng ng film sa I1, sa iFlix.
Mm-mm.
And alam mo ba kung gaano ka-connected yung cinema sa totoong buhay? Yung recent shutdown ng ABS-CBN,
Okay.
it also shut down Sagip Pelikula. Yung Sagip Pelikula,
Yung
it's the
the architect. Sige, go.
nagre-restore,
Oo.
nagre-remaster ng old films.
Mm,
And
mm.
dahil nag-shutdown ng ABS, 'di ba? Wala nang way to actually archive and restore and remaster these films na
Yeah,
responsibility ng government. Actually,
yeah.
there's, this council that's actually mandated to have a film archive. They're not
Mm,
doing it. And this private entity is actually doing it. And by
yeah.
shutting down that company, I mean, ABS-CBN,
Mm,
paano na yung mga films, di ba? Paano na yung mga plans? Paano na yung mga projects? And it's something that affects us kasi heritage natin yan, culture natin yan eh. Kung parang, di ba, parang, di ba, it also shows the disregard of this government for
mm.
culture, di ba? And
Yes.
that's infuriating for me. Wow, galit na galit.
But no one is surprised about the disregard of this government for culture. The disregard
Yeah.
for expertise, the disregard for health, the disregard for life. Anyway, on that happy note, thank you so much, Chard, for um, joining us in our discussion. In fairness, napaka-passionate ng discussion mo at dahil dyan, I will passionately mention.
Ay, wow, I love
Guys,
it.
ang ganda ba ng segue ko? Grabe, di ba? As I'm so
Oo.
very showbiz. Guys, this is still available.
Yeah.
Wait,
You can
parang
go to our
influencer, kaya lang
website.
masyadong maliit yung kamay ko, gaganyan dapat ako.
Yeah, yeah. Punta kayo. So I published a book last year. It's called
Mm-mm.
Break It to Me Gently, Essays on Filipino Film. So it's a
Mm-mm.
compilation of my writing over the past 10 years of being a film critic. And I finally had the courage to put them out in, in book form. And yeah, I'm just happy that it came out. Like I used to have this uh, dream that I'd be able to publish my first book at
Yeah.
27. Uh,
Mm-mm.
well, it didn't happen, but it took time, and it's really hard to publish a
Mm-mm.
book. And this is the second printing cover. It's in blue. It's the one available at the moment, so you can
Pero mas mataray yung may pink. Ay, ang taray ko.
you, you can buy it online at
Mm.
everythingsfineph.com. Ay, everythingsfine.ph. So,
Mm.
i-search nyo na lang or i-follow nyo ako sa Twitter and I can send you the link. And
Mm.
yeah, I'm happy that it's something that I'm proud of, to be
Yes.
honest, kasi like it's really hard to publish a book now, and not everyone's interested in reading. They'd rather do TikTok or watch videos.
Why the
So
need to attack
I'm
people?
super grateful. What? Not
May mga
really. It's more of like,
ina-attack.
I'm
Okay.
criticizing. What? Hindi naman inatak. Pero parang
Mm.
I wish there's actually yun naman yung wish ko. I wish we have more critics, no? I wish we have more
Oo.
critics who will take it seriously and
Mm.
stay on and hopefully in the future publish books.
Mm.
So, it's not always the same people who get invited to talk about film criticism. Parang ganun.
Mm.
Kumaga parang it's really about, expanding our community. Wow!
Yeah. Hindi totoo kasi marami talagang magagandang pelikulang Pilipino na natutulungan ng mga kasi kunyari ako, yung mga ibang pinapanood ko kasi nabasa ko yung mga pinagsusulat mo kasi I wouldn't be interested in some of those films if I didn't read what you said. Kasi sabi ko, oh my gosh, may nakita si Chard na maganda dun sa film.
Wow!
I mean, if he can write this passionately about something, may pa ganun, ano? So there must be something worth watching.
Sabi
So,
mo nga,
yun.
sabi mo nga sa akin, di ba, parang
Hmm.
meron
Ano?
meron akong ginawang basahan, 'di ba? Sabi
Oh
mo
my
sa akin,
God!
like
Ibe-bring up
meron
ba
akong
talaga
review.
natin? Ibe-bring up ba talaga
Hindi
natin?
natin i-bring up. Hindi na hindi
Anyway,
naman. 'Yun, another display of passion
hindi
na
kaya nga, but kasi that Richard Bolisay who wrote that no longer exists. But he is here. He is here in this book. Actually, yung binabanggit niyang review is also here in this book. So yan, bilhin niyo siya. Thanks, Chard. Thank you to everyone who watched and for everyone who will catch the delayed episode. Ay, eto na. Feel na feel ko yung pagka-influencer ko dito eh. Please like Meet the Fresh Live on Facebook or subscribe to the Meet the Fresh YouTube channel para hindi nyo ma-miss yung mga other episodes. Thank you and good evening. Bye, Chard. Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you, Cecil. Thank you, everyone. Bye.